The internet feels like the Wild West these days. Rage bait, misinformation, and straight-up lies are everywhere. And the worst part? Nobody's taking responsibility for it. But not today. Today, we're cutting through the noise and separating fact from fiction. Whether it's the controversy surrounding the PS5 Pro's PSSR, the wild claims about Assassin's Creed Shadows, or even more drama brewing in the gaming world, we're diving in, setting the record straight and giving you the real story. Let's get started. So, let's talk about the drama surrounding PSSR on the PS5 Pro. Digital Foundry recently dove into it, and let's just say the results have been a mixed bag. Some games are absolutely nailing it, while others make you wonder how they even got past QA. Let's break it down. Let's start with the positives. When implemented well, PSSR can deliver results that rival native 4K rendering. Games like The Last of Us, Part 1, and Spider-Man 2 are excellent examples. In The Last of Us, PSSR delivers crisp visuals with high-res rendering and smooth frame rates. Honestly, it's almost indistinguishable from native 4K in some scenarios. Similarly, Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet & Clank showcase beautiful ray-traced reflections that demonstrate what PSSR can do when paired with high-quality rendering pipelines. It's clear that with the right setup, this tech can elevate gaming visuals to a whole new level. But here's where things get messy. Games like Silent Hill 2, Jedi Survivor, and even Dragon's Dogma 2 show PSSR at its worst. The ray-traced lighting in these games often appears noisy, and in some cases, the upscaling is so poorly implemented that it actually looks worse than older techniques like TAA or even FSR. Take Silent Hill 2, for example. The reflections are muddy, and the overall image quality is a significant downgrade compared to other titles using similar tech. And Jedi Survivor? Let's just say the issues with foliage flickering and noisy reflections make it clear that PSSR isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So, why do some games excel while others flop? It boils down to implementation. Digital Foundry points out that PSSR performs best with less demanding scenarios, games targeting higher internal resolutions with fewer ray-traced effects. However, when you throw complex lighting, reflections, and low-res input into the mix, PSSR struggles to keep up. Another issue is developer resources. Not every studio has the time or budget to optimize PSSR for their game. In fact, some titles, like Alan Wake 2, shipped with glaring visual issues that make you wonder how they passed QA at all. Here's the big question: can PSSR improve over time? Sony has been tight-lipped about future updates, but there's hope. Similar to how Nvidia's DLSS evolved dramatically from its early versions, PSSR could benefit from continued training and refinement. One interesting suggestion from Digital Foundry is adding a system-level toggle for users to update PSSR independently, allowing improvements to roll out across all games. That would be a game changer for titles stuck with older implementations, like Jedi Survivor. However, it remains to be seen if Sony will go this route. At the end of the day, PSSR is a promising technology, but it's clearly still a work in progress. What do you think? Have you noticed any issues with PSSR in the games you're playing? So, a bit of a scandal started brewing, and honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. I was working on something else when I got tagged in a post about an article from Insider Gaming. It made a pretty bold claim, well, two bold claims, actually, that immediately caught my attention. Claim number one: the first claim was based on a video from Mark Alexis Cote, the guy who leads all things Assassin's Creed. It suggested that half of the developers working on the new Assassin's Creed Shadows have never shipped a game before. Okay, sure, that's something you can debate, but the article's second claim, that's where things got wild. Claim number two: the article stated, and I quote, "According to Mark Alexis Cote, the game's internal evaluation isn't promising either. The team behind Shadows considers this entry to be the weakest in the entire Assassin's Creed franchise." End quote. When I read that, I thought, what? That can't be right. Why would the leader of the franchise publicly say something like that at a keynote speech? Here's the thing. This keynote was at the External Developer Summit, a major industry event. Why would Mark Alexis Cote, in front of a live audience, streamed online, bash his own game? Imagine if I told you, hey, I've got this big project coming up and it's the worst thing I've ever done. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody would do that. I checked the video they referenced, and here's what he actually said. He mentioned that half of the team working on Shadows are junior developers, which is true and fine. He also talked about how, during the development process, things can feel chaotic, even hopeless. But he emphasized that this is normal and that games often come together in the final months. He even used Assassin's Creed 2 as an example, saying that just months before release, it felt unfinished, and then it launched to critical acclaim with a 91 on Metacritic. Nowhere in that keynote did Mark Alexis say that Shadows was the weakest entry, or that internal evaluations were bad. It was completely made up. And that's my issue. The article twisted his words and presented a claim that didn't exist. It made it sound like Ubisoft's team was trashing their own game when that wasn't the case at all. This fake news spread fast. Some YouTubers jumped on it, the usual rage bait crowd, and started making videos saying, even Ubisoft knows Shadows is garbage. But here's the kicker. Insider Gaming issued a correction. They removed the false claim, added an editor's note, and even the site's owner, Tom Henderson, apologized publicly. He called it a huge mistake and said they've updated their practices to ensure this doesn't happen again. Here's the takeaway. Always think critically. Just because a story fits a narrative you like doesn't mean it's true. If something seems too crazy to be real, like a developer publicly trashing their own game, it probably isn't. Insider Gaming has a good track record, but even they got it wrong here. It's a reminder to approach everything with a bit of skepticism, especially when it seems sensational. So yeah, it's disappointing, but at least they owned up to the mistake and fixed it quickly. That's more than some outlets do. Hopefully, we won't see this kind of thing again, but if you come across creators or outlets pushing this narrative, now you know it's fake. So, CD Projekt Red is making The Witcher 4, codenamed Project Polaris, and one of the biggest changes is that they're ditching their own Reed engine for Unreal Engine 5. It's a huge shift, and they're doing it to streamline development across multiple projects. They've even partnered with Epic Games to customize the engine for open-world RPGs, which sounds great on paper. They've said this move will help them handle big, complex games like the new Witcher trilogy, the Cyberpunk sequel, and even their new IP, codenamed Hadar. But honestly, I'm nervous about this switch to UE5. Have you noticed how a lot of recent games made on Unreal Engine 5 are launching with problems? Like, yeah, the engine is insanely powerful. It's supposed to let developers create huge worlds with crazy levels of detail, but it's also new, and it seems like even experienced studios are struggling to get things right. Look at games like Remnant 2 or Fort Solis. It looked amazing, but had performance issues, bugs, or optimization problems. Even when studios put out patches, it's like they're playing catch-up after launch. I get why CDPR made this choice, though. Reed Engine probably wasn't scalable for all the projects they have going on, and Unreal Engine 5 offers more tools and resources. But there's a learning curve here, and it feels like they're taking a risk, especially with how ambitious they're being. This isn't just one game. It's the start of a trilogy, and they've said they want to release the next two games within a shorter time frame after this one. If the first one has major issues, wouldn't that slow everything else down? And then there's Cyberpunk 2077. I know they've turned it around with updates and DLC, but that launch was a disaster, and it's still fresh in people's minds. Switching engines feels like adding even more pressure to get everything perfect, especially since they're already working on other big projects at the same time. I guess what I'm saying is, it's a bold move, but it makes me uneasy. What if the first game in the trilogy ends up being buggy or undercooked because of the engine transition? Do you think they'll pull it off, or are we setting ourselves up for another rocky launch? Let's shift gears to something more positive. So Digital Foundry shared their analysis of the PlayStation 5 Pro patch of the latest entry in the series by Polyphony Digital, going over all the enhancements, which include full ray tracing support for both races and replays, PSSR implementation, an 8K mode, and a slew of PSVR 2 improvements. Interestingly enough, users are limited to using the PSSR upscaler only if they want to experience ray tracing in cockpit view, most likely due to how demanding it is. In every other scenario, users can either use PSSR or the original TAA option with or without ray tracing. Here's the biggest news of the week so far. Larian wasn't kidding when they said they're not quite done. They've packed in so much that it feels like a mini expansion. We're talking 12 new subclasses, crossplay, photo mode, and a ton of other cool stuff. It's funny because I didn't expect this level of enhancements after the game already felt like such a complete masterpiece. But here we are. What's cool about the 12 new subclasses is how much they'll shake up gameplay. There's one for every class, so no matter what you're into, you'll get something fresh. And it's not just a tweak here or there. These subclasses bring new abilities, animations, and even unique dialogue lines. Like, imagine being an Oathbreaker Knight and having special reactions just for breaking your Paladin Oath. That's next level immersion, right? Some of these subclasses are wild. The College of Glamour for Bards lets you charm enemies and command them to do stuff like flee or drop their weapon. It's basically crowd control with style. And the Path of Giants for Barbarians, you get increased throw damage and can yeet enemies across the map thanks to your new Giant's Rage passive. I mean, who doesn't want to feel like a giant stomping around Faerun. There's also some seriously creative stuff here. Clerics are getting the Death Domain, which is perfect if you've ever wanted to turn your necromancy vibes up to 11. You can even blow up nearby corpses for AoE damage. Tell me that doesn't sound both horrifying and hilarious. And druids? They're getting the Circle of Stars, which lets you transform into starry form based on constellation. You can go full archer, chalice, or dragon mode, each with different bonuses. It's like tapping into cosmic power for some beautifully strategic gameplay. Oh, and monks? They've got the Drunken Master subclass now, which lets you literally drink from bottles lying around the Sword Coast to recover Kai. What's funnier is that you can also get enemies drunk, and drunk enemies are easier to hit. It's like Larian said, you know what monks need? Beer-fueled chaos. I love it. The creativity doesn't stop there. Rogues can become swashbucklers, full pirate mode with sand-tossing blinds, and a passive skill called Fancy Footwork that lets you dance out of melee without provoking opportunity attack. Rangers get the Swarmkeeper subclass, which is all about summoning jellyfish, moths, and bees for damage. Yes, bees. You're basically nature's angriest beekeeper. Then there's the Shadow Magic subclass for sorcerers, which gives you the ability to teleport between dark spaces. Oh, and you get a spooky Hound of Ill Omen to harass enemies. It's perfect for anyone leaning into those dark, edgy vibes. Warlocks are getting the Hexblade, which might be one of the coolest subclasses yet. You're literally making a pact with a weapon from the Shadowfell, cursing enemies, and ripping chunks of their souls to heal yourself. It's so metal, I can't handle it. And for wizards, the Bladesinger subclass is all about mixing spellcasting with speed and agility. You get this ability called Blade Song that boosts your constitution saves, making you feel like a magical fencer dancing across the battlefield. One of the most exciting non-subclass updates is full crossplay. Whether you're on PC, PS5, or Xbox Series, you'll finally be able to play and progress with your friends across platforms. It's about time, right? It feels like such a no-brainer for a game like this. And then there's the new photo mode. Honestly, this could be its own feature showcase. You can customize scenes, tweak camera settings, toggle characters and enemies on or off, and even set facial expressions and poses. They're giving us over 40 poses with variations, plus post-processing effects, frames, and stickers. Basically, you can make your characters look like they belong on a magazine cover, or a ridiculous meme, depending on your mood. It's funny because a lot of us thought Baldur's Gate 3 was already near perfect, but this update feels like Larian saying, oh, you thought we were done. Hold our beer. These new subclasses don't just add variety. They completely reinvent how you can approach the game. Want to be a tanky paladin soaking up damage while healing your party? Go for the Oath of the Crown. Want to go full chaos mode as a drunk monk? Knock yourself out. It's all about giving players more freedom to play the way they want. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.